So I think I was in first grade, which seems young, but I started having like these horrible stomach aches around like the same time every single day and couldn't really figure out what was going on. And I was like, I'm not sick, it's not happening till this time of the day. And, I had no idea what stress was at that point because I was 7. And so I had no idea what stress was and didn't really understand the idea of like mental illnesses. And so I was like, well, maybe I just don't feel good. And of course, by the time I got to second grade, it had manifested into this huge thing.
She started to develop some kind of unusual fears that didn't seem, that seemed irrational, right? So like started with a fear of wind, which is not great living in Helena.
Asking the school to close shades, if where we live and where she went to elementary school really does get a lot of wind. And there were days she just couldn't finish the day and she'd come to my office and I'd work and she'd hide under my desk. And then it came in, it was primarily weather, and it started to manifest into other forms of worry that became all-encompassing, that made school impossible, made everyday life impossible.
It kind of depends. Like sometimes I feel like panic attacks, I feel like I'm suffocating. Like I cannot breathe. The second time I went to Shodair, I was having a lot of panic attacks and like huge major ones. It just feels like I'm like losing control and I don't know how to gain it back. So I'm like, it's like I'm really struggling and I don't know how to roll it back in.
It just slowly started to manifest itself over the years and get progressively more debilitating for her and made it incredibly difficult for our family to function in a way that you would think a normal family with 3 daughters would function.
When I was in second grade, they started talking about bipolar disorder, which is unusual because a lot of times they wait to diagnose bipolar disorder until you're like in your 20s, because that's when people start seeing signs of it. But I think they were pretty positive that's what it was, and it was bipolar disorder, it was OCD, it was separation anxiety, clinical anxiety, and that kind of became known for sure around 5th grade.
Bella's issues are pretty complex, and so it's really taken many years to figure out exactly what will help her.
We had hit a point where she was starting to self-harm to an extent, and beyond that, as difficult it is to admit, we could no longer care for her.
When I first got to Shodair, I was terrified because I obviously knew I was at a really dark point in my life and knew I was really struggling mentally and emotionally, and I knew I was, I think, a danger to myself at that point.
Bella was having very chronic suicidal ideation, and we were fearful for her life. And at that point, you realize, and it's kind of a helpless feeling, that everything you're trying to do and being really proactive as parents is not working.
I was just in such a bad spot. I was suicidal. I was hurting myself. I was just in a horrible spot, and I really didn't think there was any way I was ever going to get better. I thought I was going to die, actually. I was just kind of accepted at that point that was the end for me.
And her quality of life didn't exist. It was just daily management of stress and of anxiety and fear, and our quality of life had no substance to it either. And it just hit a point that we realized that we absolutely needed help.
I just don't even, it's kind of surreal that I was at that point at one point in my life, because, Shodair changed my life. I wouldn't be alive without Shodair at all.
When a child presents to our facility, it's not uncommon that they have a mood disorder. And many children present with irritable mood. Irritability is a common symptom in adolescent depression, but it's also a common symptom in bipolar illness, severe anxiety disorders, ADHD. So because it's a common symptom, we have to ask specific questions about the illness to make the correct diagnosis.
When problems aren't easily understood, it's much easier to to put a label on them and say that they're bad, or to identify them in some way that isn't acceptable. So the interesting thing about this stigma that's developed in our society is that we are placing a stigma on something that is universal, right? We may not all have an official diagnosis, but we've all been through difficult times. We've all felt difficult emotions. Really and truly, the only way out is through, and it's working through them, and it's feeling those feelings and talking to people and building those relationships and building trust. And I would say that that is hard. And it's so hard that it's really easy to want to ignore it and to numb that and to set it aside and to not face it.
Mental health has to start to be recognized. You know, there needs to be that value that society looks at. We are trying to make a difference for kids who are coming here. It's like if you have cancer, we have all these facilities to take care of somebody struggling from cancer. But when you have a mental health issue, we want to push it to the side and hope it goes away, instead of really providing the resources to treat it and take care of it.
There is a huge stigma around mental health because we're scared to talk about it. We can see if somebody has a broken bone, we can see if someone has a bruise on their leg, but we can't see what's going on in their brain. But I think Shodair can really show Montana and the country in general that it's not something to be scared of.
I think it's important for people to realize that it's a real thing, and it does not, the biggest thing for me is mental illness does not discriminate, People, I think, a lot of time assume mental illness comes from people who have hard families and, bad home lives and broken families, and that's not, yes, that does manifest there, but I think that's not the case. I have a beautiful house with amazing family and amazing friends, and I still have bipolar disorder, and that's not anybody's fault. I think it's also important for people to understand that we're not trying to be mentally ill. I promise you, if we could not do that, we would not, because, I think it's made me who I am today and given me a better perspective on life. I don't want to deal with it. I don't think anybody does.
I truly believe Shodair has saved her life. And to go from a place where we felt like we were losing her, and then to see her now be this, and not that every day is perfect, for sure, but Bella's awareness of what she needs and ability to advocate for what she needs, and feeling confident that she's becoming this strong, independent person is all those things that we knew were there, that we didn't think we were going to get to a point to see really go to her potential, and it's pretty exciting to see her get there.
And so that's something that really sticks out to me about Bella, is that tenacious grit that it takes to be brave and be there and be present and to feel everything that she was feeling, right? Because it's really easy to ignore our emotions. It's really easy to stuff them away, and I think it takes much more courage to feel them and to work through them.
Her level of bravery and courage is, when she was in her 2 stays at Shodair, Jill and I would talk in the morning and both feel like we just couldn't do this anymore, and we'd reply to each other, if Isabella can do it, we can do it.
So I think Shodair really helped me figure out times and places and when to start recognizing that I was starting to go down. Shodair changed that completely, to figure out, wow, I'm starting to have a panic attack. I need to catch this before it happens. They really helped me figure out when it was time to get help or when it was time to use what I had. They definitely helped me become more self-aware, I think, of what I have going on and what I can push myself to do and what I know, I don't think I should do that, and how to communicate that with people and let them know, I think that would be great for you, but I can't handle that. And they push me to advocate for myself, It's important with my disorders and with the world we kind of live in to let people know, no, I'm not going to do that, or I'll do that, but I need you to give me 10 minutes and stand up for myself in that realm. I think before Shodair, we were all in a little bit of denial maybe of that this was as big as it was. I think it was important for us to recognize that this was more than just a down spot in my mental illness. Mental illness is real, but I have the ability and I have the tools to keep going and to get through that. And I think that was a huge, huge step in realizing, things might, get really bad again, but I can get help. I can, I know there are people there for me and I know how to figure that out. Shodair gave me the tools and gave me the self-knowledge that it's, I'm gonna get better.